presentation. We'll be covering or answering 5 questions covering various topics in the industrial organizational psychology's field of study. Most of this brief will strongly reference the works of Steve Jecks and Thomas Brett and their book, Organizational Psychology, A Scientist Practitioner Approach. We'll be covering chapters 1 through 6. So this question covers some of the topics in chapter 1 that talked about some of the historical implications of the organizational psychology field or industrial organizational psychology and where it began. So people have been trying to affect their employees or people that they are a team with for a long time. So in our book, there was an example of, I think, in Exodus, where Moses was trying to get some sort of organizational plan started to really, be more proficient in terms of how information got passed through and to make his life easier. And, psychology, organizational psychology really is affected by history and subsequent research, in the field. And then, of course, publications of that research and adoption and application of certain things. And so recent events obviously kind of bring forth a new aspect of, new areas to study to the kind of new problems that we have to combat. And one of those was the COVID-19 pandemic, where to combat the spread of COVID-19, employers really had to find out new ways of working, new places to put their employees. And, one of those ways was working from home. Technology has advanced so far where we can communicate with each other so easily now, so quickly. And even, now it's so personal and simple. So working from home really isn't a problem because most of the stuff they do is through an email, or some sort of portal, and you can call up someone and say, "Hey, I need you to do such and such thing." But for the amount of time that a lot of these people were at home, it really changed the work-life balance for them, and so that was one problem. How do we approach now someone who's working from home and has to balance, well, say there's their children who are also at home from school because of the COVID-19 and doing their schoolwork at home. How do you approach that? And that's a different problem that we had to research. And so, for example, Tesla has had a problem with workers returning to work. And it's even approached it by creating a very large document that hopefully helped their workers get back to work. And, they did that because obviously the dynamic has changed. And, the pandemic caused so much turmoil in terms of unemployment and, people returning to work after long periods of time at home, and they have to kind of change their mind about whether or not they want to continue doing that because it kind of felt good to be at home. Oh, for some, and for others, maybe not. But that is one recent event that really caused some problems. To describe the socialization process for for my degree program is kind of difficult because I am an online student, fully online, and socialization deals with the interactions of individuals in an organization, employees, employers, and well, then of course in this graduate program it'd be teachers and students. Um, so it's hard, but I think I can do it considering just some of the thought processes that I went through when I decided to get my degree at Liberty University. I knew of Liberty University through, matter of fact, some family members that attended. I actually have an uncle who is, I think, recently was um, inducted in the Hall of Fame, Liberty Flame Hall of Fame. He was a wrestler, NCAA champion, Warren Stewart. And I just knew about Liberty University through him. And, that is a history, I guess, of the school. I think it's been around for 50 years. And that has, been put out there for me to learn, to when I started kind of figuring out, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get in there and go for it. In terms of being military, it was great because they do well for family members, and in terms of financing, that's why I did it. History and good benefits. Anyways, to get to the socialization process part of it, history. When you become a part of an organization, well, the history is one of six organizational socialization processes, or dimensions. And history, language, politics, people, organizational goals, values, performance, and proficiency. You know, when I first decided, hey, I'm joining this organization, pretty much a part of it already, the history. I learned it through online, through people that I knew, and through the videos that I watched. In terms of, hey, this is what we are about. When it comes to language, the school obviously speaks through academia, and one of those things is in my degree is APA. That's a specific language we have to learn in terms of how to write. One of my first um, experiences was with my first professor, my first class here, where very stickler, because I had done APA prior to, and I thought I had it down pat, but it was a different level, next level, and I had to learn that. Politics is fairly light, I think, when it comes to the hierarchy. It's professor, all the rules and regulations he has to follow, push down to us in terms of, hey, this is how you're going to do things. This is our rules, and then it's student, and we got to follow this as best we can. People, the same thing. It's we don't interact that much, other than discussion boards that we take part of, and obviously that's in there to help us interact in an environment where we're just looking at a screen and there's really nobody on the other side. Um, you can create connections if you want to. You don't have to. Uh, I think it's good. It goes by quickly. Organizational goals and values. I'm running out of time here already, but my goals and values align quite well with this university being a Christian. I want to learn, obviously, a profession, but I also want to incorporate God and anything and everything I do. I'd love to work for an organization like my uncle. Um, he works for a nonprofit Christian organization that reaches people that are lost. And lastly, performance proficiency. We got to be graded on what we do, and how well we do is communicated to us, and we learn from that. And the question is, do what is it good socializing, and does it create a job embeddedness? I think so. I think that if you align yourself with the goals and values, it teaches you that. you're going to find a way to embed yourself into that organization that you want to be in, you know, and that's what this school does. I think this question is easier for me to answer than it would be to apply in an organization, mainly because, as we've learned, many different people have different expectations on how their work and their home life um, will interact. You know, um, some people think, hey, a 50-50 split between work and home is great. Um, but other people might want more. They might want more time at home. Um, some people at work are they love to be at work. They don't like to be at home, and that works for them. But you know, one of the first ways I think to prevent work family conflict is to, I think, develop realistic expectations. Um, being in the military, I know oftentimes recruiters are not completely on the level when it comes to describing some of the jobs in the military accurately. I know for mine, the one of the most common things to have been said was, you know, it's a 9 to 5 job. That's the Air Force, and come to find out that that's not what I was expecting. Because I had worked hard jobs before, um, but being a maintainer, not a 9 to 5 job. It's a 7 to 7 job. It's a 12 to 12 job. It's sometimes it's 7 to 3:30, 4:30, but it differs. It really does. And so definitely generalizing as a 9 to 5 job was bad expectation to set. And when it comes to your new hires, you should probably tell give them a good um, story of what you're going to do. Story. You're going to give them a plan. What's going to happen to them when they do get that job? You know, you definitely want to hire people that want to work there. And whenever you hire someone and they find out that there's conflict, it's going to be painful to figure out how to deal with it. So sometimes, inevitably, I believe that you're going to deal with problems with the people that you work with. Me, being a supervisor at work, I have to balance what I need done at work and what they think they need done at home. And sometimes it's important. There's been times when, hey, my son is had a really bad accident, and my wife, she doesn't speak English very well, and we need to navigate getting them to the hospital, getting them care. It's like, hey, okay, you need to go. You know, this is important for you and your family. My expectations of what he's done uh, is not that important. That's a good thing. You can have, that's called supervisor support. That's another thing you can do. Definitely train your people to realize that life happens and to minimize the work family conflict. I mean, in essence, there wouldn't be when you realize that and actually sometimes even design um, things uh, to mitigate things that'll happen. So, like in the military, we have for single mothers and fathers. Um, they're called family plans, and there are times when, hey, it's time to deploy, or it's time to do an exercise, which is going to keep you busy for 12 plus hours a day, every day of the week, no weekends, and uh, running out of time again. So hey, you got to create plans to deal with those family problems and personal coping mechanisms. Realizing, hey, you know is this really important? um, to me, to my family, and talking, communicating, creating a work family balance. You really do. Personally, you can do it, but training to tell people, hey, take some time off and relax. And, that's going to help you. And, that'll prevent work family conflict. Those are a couple ways of doing it. And that's a couple ways we've learned. Okay, first things first, if I was to create a performance system program, I would use something similar to Campbell's model of job performance. I think that it does a pretty good job of adequately evaluating an employee if you set it up correctly. In my past, I've experienced, I think, bad approaches at good programs in terms of assessing performance. So, Campbell's model of job performance has 8 aspects, and we're going to go through them today. Job specific task proficiency, I think, is an easy one. This is how I look at it. You know, um, you have a job, say maintenance, you have 100 tasks that have been laid out for you to learn. You learn them in tech school in terms of like the basic understanding of it, which is declarative knowledge. Hey, I know these things because I read it in a book, right? But you need to know and go down to the more procedural knowledge and task proficiency, meaning getting the tools in your hand and learn how to do the job. So that's job specific task proficiency. You have 100 of them. If you've reached 50%, yeah, you're doing pretty good. You set a time frame. You need to get it done with this in this time frame. If you're behind the curve, you're not doing so well. You got to do better. So that's one way of doing it. I think it's the same thing when it comes to the second one, non-job specific task proficiency. I think it can be different, but you would give it to a specific employee. They would learn it, and you would track them on it, and you would judge them that way. Number 3, written and oral communication skills are very important in many fields. To include, military, and that's my experience. So when it comes to briefing people, you got to learn how to communicate correctly, and writing skills are also important because a lot of organizations use email, and you need to accurately be able to tell people what to do or what you need to get things done, and creating the standard is what's important. And when judging job performance against that standard, that's what you got to do. You got to be a standard. You got to follow it. Demonstrating effort. I think when it comes to that, it's kind of it might be a little more how you feel about it. It might not be very specific. There might not be a standard of it, but I think it's something that needs to be done. Demonstrating effort is important. Some people can do things really well, but they're not really putting a lot of effort into it. And other people are trying their hardest, and I think it'll catch up where the people that are trying the hardest will get really good at what they're trying to do later on, and their heart's there. So I think that needs to be documented somehow. Maintaining personal discipline when it comes to, say if it's a physical job, you're going to have to maintain your physical body yourself to do that job. If you're a policeman, you're going to be able to have to run fast, to catch a bad guy sometime. And if you eat a lot of donuts, you're not going to be able to do that. A lot of what you do outside the job affects the inside when you're inside the job. You know, if you don't have personal discipline when it comes to, say, alcohol, you're going to have a hard time coming to work. Yeah. Anyways, let's see. Facilitating peer and team performance. Definitely a good thing to record. You know, there is definitely aspects. I think I'll keep going back to it. There's got to be a standard. Hey, your team performed this well according to this standard. Uh, it can't be biased in any way. It can't be, oh, I like this guy, so yeah, I think his team performed better. It's a standard that you have to make and they have to meet compared to everybody else. Supervisor and leadership skills, kind of, I think, a little bit harder to create a standard, but there are certain things you can do, say like mentorship programs that you implement to help your supervisors lead your teams. And if they're applying those things the way you expect them to, that's one way you can judge them according to the standard and document their performance. Management and administration, I think, is one of the easier ones. Hey, you give a guy a certain amount of money, say, I want you to do this project within a certain amount of time and a certain amount of money. And they do it, they do great. So it's easy to document because you say, hey, time made, perfect. Time not made, not so bad, not so good. And I think if you do that, I think you do a really good job. It's creating the standard and documenting it correctly. Hopefully you can observe those things yourself. And if you are going to get that information from another source, make sure that it is good to go. So, organizational constraints, what are they and what are the common ones? So, I have a list. So one of them is time constraints, and I believe that sometimes certain jobs cause stress because of time constraints, where you need to get something done very quickly, and you don't understand why. But it's a constraint that the business has. These things need to be done now, and it could be go 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 all the way until the end, and a lot of stress definitely is it a constraint and not much that the organization can do about it. So in some instances, poor equipment I deal with a lot in my job. We deal with 50-year-old equipment, and it's hard to get new equipment for whatever reasons. Through contract reasons, they don't make it anymore. There's It's a constraint that causes lots of frustration. Unnecessary rules and regulations. Being in a government organization myself, it is a pain sometimes to get past the red tape to get things done, and it's frustrating. Policies that waste employees off time is another big one for me, and for probably many other people. Definitely messing with someone's off time causes massive frustrations, and you know where they feel you might even be doing it on purpose, but definitely that might not be the case, or most likely not the case. It's just the constraint that the organization has. Having used personal finances, I know my mother-in-law and some other friends of mine who are teachers have had to use their personal finances to stock their classrooms for certain things, or to do something special that they think that the organization should be capable of doing, but decides not to. um, and it breeds discontent. It breeds um, feelings of frustration, and it definitely can lead to destructive behavior, um, given certain situations and certain people. Pay and benefits is another one that definitely can affect it, especially when or if you do know the the pay of another individual doing similar work can lead to jealousy, which can lead to um, other bad behaviors. And the reason it does is through studies that they found. One of these is the Specter's model of impact of locus of control on the relationships between frustrations and counterproductive behavior. I know you can't really see it that well here, but I'll read it to you. Constraints can lead to feelings of frustration, and depending on the control of the individual, can lead to destructive behaviors or constructive behaviors, which would be making it better, trying to figure out a better way about it. Good destructive behaviors would be feeling feeling entitled to something. For example, say that due to recent changes in budgets, people are no longer able to have lunch on the company um, that they used to have. Um, and that could be, they could be frustrated about that because they hardly get paid anyways, being a line cook or whatever. And they say, yep, okay, you're no longer allowed to have a sandwich at lunch. Maybe you can only just have a drink, or one refill or one drink. And it leads to the frustration, and a person with low control, they will say, you know what, I'm going to have as much Coke as I want, and have drinks throughout the day, which obviously can hurt the organization. And that's one example that I can think of. I know 5 figure discounts is a really common one, or taking more time on the toilet. When it comes to government time, people always say I use my restroom time at work only so that I'm getting paid to go to the bathroom, and it's a common thing to hear. And taking excessive smoke breaks, it's just those little things that are not constructive to the workplace, and it is mm, sometimes made because of how people feel about organizational constraints.